Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast. This is Yavi Caro, and in each episode, you will learn a new skill with the help of an expert. Welcome to a new season, and this is very exciting because we are approaching episode 100. Also, this season, I am officially launching coaching opportunities for us to work together so you can master skills we discuss here, become a high performer in your career, and lead a high performing team. To get the details first of these limited opportunities, go to my website, hardcoresofskillspodcast.com, and sign up to my newsletter. My focus on the past few years has been to find out how we can master the non technical skills we need for technical jobs. Why? Because over and over, research shows that soft skills are what will take your career forward. This season, I'll answer common questions I have received from people like you who listen to this podcast. A key question is, how do I demonstrate my soft skills in my job search? And as always, to answer this, I brought in an expert. Thea Kelly is a job search and interview coach serving job seekers nationwide for more than 15 years. Her Amazon bestseller, Get That Job, the quick and complete guide to a winning interview, has been praised as excellent on Forbes.com. Today, we talked about how to demonstrate our soft skills, especially during the interview process. Let's listen. Thank you so much, Thea, for being here with me on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be talking with you and your audience.
Well, it's wonderful that that I get to meet you and talk with you because one of the key things that listeners have been asking me is in terms of soft skills, either for the resume or also for the interview, all that process. Because here we teach a lot about how to get better in different soft skills, and when it comes time to get the job, it's kind of difficult to reflect that. But before we get
Yes.
into that, I want to ask you in terms of why did you decided to focus on the aspect of career coaching and helping job seekers?
Yeah. Well, I've had a very varied career, everything from being a life coach back in the 90s to being a corporate trainer. And most of my career has revolved around communication. And a lot of it has revolved around working with people one on one. And that's what I've discovered is what I like best. So when the recession happened in late 2007, I got my company laid off a bunch of people, including me.
Mm.
And so while I was looking for a job, I started writing resumes and helping people with interview prep because that was something I had a little background in already. And I discovered, hey, I really like this better than any other type of work I've been doing. So I just went into business for myself at that point, and I've been doing that ever since. Yeah.
So when it comes to reflecting the soft skills on the resume or for an interview, how do you what what do you recommend for that?
Well, the main thing that I see is soft skills are kind of hard to talk about. And other things you can put on your resume that are technical, you can say, I've worked with Python and writing code for this or that, and it's very specific. But when it comes to talking about soft skills, people don't know how to talk about it. They'll say, well, my strengths are communication and I'm good with people. But everybody says that, and it isn't convincing enough. So I find that one thing about soft skills is you need to demonstrate them by how you interact with the interviewer and how you interact in the job search process. So, for example, the first contact with the recruiter, they're already going to be noticing things like your communication skills, your soft skills. So some ways that you can demonstrate that, for example, would be demonstrating your social skills by being warm and genuine and being able to make small talk, which is not always easy for everybody. And I saw a great video by Steve Dalton, who wrote The 2-Hour Job Search. I really admire that book. And he said that he himself is an introvert, so he has to sort of have a framework of how to do it. And he recommends 3 questions that work out really well. One is, how's your day going so far? And as he points out, you need to demonstrate a soft skill called empathy by how you respond to that. because if the person just responds, oh, fine, how about yours? Then they're expecting a response like, fine, thanks for asking. But if they say something like, his example was, my day's been crazy so far. My dog got sick and I had to take him to the vet. Then you need to demonstrate soft skills by rolling with that and saying, oh, is your dog okay? So you have to remember that the interviewer is a human being and not get so caught up in seeing them as this big scary gatekeeper, and realize that they have feelings, and that just, being human with them is really important. The, I was going to say communication skills also, which is a very broad term, and we can talk about that in a moment. What on earth does it even mean? But one thing it means with when you're contacted by a recruiter is to be assertive. And if they don't tell you who you're going to be meeting with, or if they just give you some names and they don't tell you the person's role, I find that many, many job seekers neglect to ask about that because they feel intimidated. So you have to have the assertiveness at the end of the call, if the recruiter still hasn't identified who you're going to meet with, just to say, who am I going to be meeting with? Oh, okay. And what's that person's role? Then you'll be much better prepared. Or if they still don't know yet, as often happens, then you can just say, okay, how about if I drop you a note in a couple days and see if that's been firmed up so that I can better know what to expect. So assertiveness would be another one. Communicating in a clear and organized way, which is really hard to do when you're winging it. So one thing I always tell my clients is be prepared. Think about what they're going to ask. Don't memorize answers, but plan. Have a general idea what you're going to say in response to various questions. So right from the very beginning, right from when the recruiter contacts you, you can be demonstrating, not just talking about your soft skills, but showing them.
Yeah. No, yeah, go ahead, because I like what you're saying in terms of it's not the evident question of, are you a good communicator or anything? It's just actually demonstrating those things.
Yeah. And then during the interview process itself, for example, a lot of soft skills come up there. For example, you may be asked questions that require some self-awareness to answer. For example, they may say something like, what are your greatest strengths? Well, no, let me start with this. Like, what is your management style, or what is your work style? And a lot of people, we've never really thought about what our style is. So you need to have thought about it. Or people might say, I'm a good communicator. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're very articulate and well organized in your communication? Does it more mean that you're very friendly and genuine and put people at ease? Does it maybe mean that, I had some examples here, what it might mean. I always ask my clients, what do you mean by having good communication skills? Maybe it means humor. Maybe it means writing well. Maybe it means being responsive and responding in a timely fashion to people. That's a good communication skill. Another one is, of course, being able to write well, expressing empathy. If you feel you're good with empathy, why? Why do you think that? And maybe it's that people have told you, oh, you're so easy to talk to. You always say the right thing. Maybe that's what it is. So I'm not inviting anybody to make up, why they're a good communicator, but to soul search and ask yourself, what is it about the way I communicate that works well for people? So yeah, so and then self-management, that's another soft skill, very much comes up in the interview process, because I know interviewing just makes people very nervous sometimes. And sometimes we feel like there's nothing we can do about that. It's just the circumstances, that's how it's going to be. But there's a lot you can do. One thing I find that not many people have tried, but that works really well, is to visualize going through the interview and imagine the conversation. Imagine the person smiling and nodding as you're talking to them. Imagine yourself being very calm and confident. And imagine yourself communicating clearly and saying the things that you've planned to say. And you would be surprised how much 2 or 3 minutes, or maybe 5 minutes of imagining that very vividly will make the difference. And then you go to the interview and you come back and you say, I thought I was going to be really nervous, but I wasn't. I don't know why. Well, the reason why is that you already prepared yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you mentioned a couple of things there. First, the importance of preparation. And in your book, you talk a lot about that. And I want to expand on that a little bit. And the exercise that you just mentioned, the visualization, because it's so powerful. It's
Yes.
something that when we go into an interview, we just kind of like all nervous and I hope they like me and all that, but we think the worst, or at least I get to think the worst.
Yeah.
so
You're not
so
alone in that. Yeah.
So, what are some of the key tips that you suggest for proper preparation? You already mentioned some in terms of identifying your style. What are some of other things that we can do to prepare for a job interview?
Um, okay. Let's talk about some of the other social skills involved, and I'll tell you how to prepare when it comes
Wonderful.
to each and individual soft skill.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Being prepared is really essential for demonstrating motivation, and this is something that employers are really looking for. So they don't want you to be fumbling for your answers. They want to know that you've given it some thought. On the other hand, they don't want to feel that you've memorized things. So what I always suggest to people in preparing your answers is make yourself a little talking points outline of your answer to a certain question, bullet points. So not complete sentences, because first of all, those are harder to remember in the moment. And secondly, you're likely to recite them exactly as you wrote them. So talking points, and then practice saying it out loud from that, maybe using different words every time to make it natural. That'll help demonstrate motivation. Another thing about demonstrating motivation is that many people, even though they love their work and care very much about it, they will go to an interview and talk with a very straight face and in a very emotionless way. This is especially often true of technical people. Um, and they don't convey their excitement for the role, especially when they're talking to the interviewer. I've had this experience with my clients where when I'm talking with them casually, they're like, yeah, I really like my work. And it's so exciting what's happening with this or that technology right now. And then when we start mock interviewing, they get very deadpan and they just don't show it. So I would say you don't want to try and be an actor if you're not an actor, and you don't want to try and fake it. But what you do want to do is don't hesitate to use words um, like I just love this or that, or I'm fascinated by that. I'm excited about that. Just use those words now and then, and don't feel it's irrelevant how you feel about various aspects of your job. Like when you've told a story about a really good accomplishment, there's nothing wrong with saying, and I was just so jazzed at the way that worked out. So show some feeling, and that helps show your motivation that you really love your work. Let me see, other soft skills, collaboration and teamwork. That's one
Yeah.
where, yeah, they really want this. Employers really want this, but there's no use just going to the interview and saying, I'm a teamwork person, I'm good at teamwork, because everybody will say that. And because it's just not convincing. So what you need to do instead, I don't know that you can really demonstrate teamwork in an interview. Some opportunity might come up, but mainly for that, you need an example, a story. And also, when you talk about teamwork, you need to maybe be a little bit more specific about it. An answer that is more specific and unique is more believable than one that's general and yeah, just very general. So you might say something like, yeah, teamwork and collaboration are part of what makes my job enjoyable. I can always take some time to help a coworker. It may set me back temporarily, but I'm sure by the end of the day or the next day, I will have caught up. And I really learned some things. For instance, just recently, I had a fellow team member who was blocked about something on Salesforce. He couldn't figure out how to do something he wanted to do. So we took some time. It's not that I really knew more about Salesforce than he did, but two heads are better than one. We worked it out, and I learned some new things too. So reasons like that are why I love to share knowledge and just, work with people. So you see how that example would be so much more believable than just saying, I believe in teamwork, I'm very collaborative. So be specific, tell stories. Let's go on to another soft skill here. Adaptability. That is something you actually could demonstrate in the interview. For example, if something goes wrong during the interview, to just flow with it and not get all flustered, but maybe help out. If maybe some piece of equipment's not working, try and help them troubleshoot it, laugh about it. So showing adaptability, problem solving is very similar. If a problem arises, just try and solve it. Leadership. That's a
Hmm.
real important soft skill employers are looking for. And leadership is no one thing, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Absolutely, because and I'm curious about that one because when you mentioned, great that you're addressing kind of all the key soft skills that we need
mhm.
to show, and it goes back to having being prepared and having that kind of a story for each thing. When it comes to leadership, how we think, for example, that we want to show leadership because we have occupied a position before in management or something like that. How do we show leadership even if that's not the case? How do we demonstrate that skill in an interview?
Yeah. Um, there are lots of opportunities for leadership. So you could easily tell a story about a time when you took the initiative to do something that you weren't required to do, like when you noticed that some process in the workspace could have been working better, and so you did a little research and came up with a solution. So that would be leadership because you took the initiative. Um, what else? Training people or coaching people is a leadership skill. You should
Hmm.
always, a lot of us, depending on your occupation, but have a story about coaching or training somebody, helping out somebody who is new, for instance, on the team, which is something that almost any employee can find themselves doing. Um, and not just, they were new and so I helped them out, but think about, what skills did you show in that? Maybe some of the skills you showed were awareness of unwritten rules of the office, awareness of the culture of the office. And so you help them out by pointing out, ins and outs, like, when you have a question like that, the person to ask is so and so. Um, so those are some leadership skills. And um, if you actually are a manager, then we also get into things like supervision and team building.
Yeah.
And I find that some people in management haven't had formal training as a manager. They may be very good at it, but they don't have the vocabulary to describe how they do what they do. And if that's you, if somebody asking what's your management style leads to you saying, "Well, my door is always open, and I believe in being fair,"
Hmm.
that's the most common answer I hear. And so, because it's so common, it's not going to really be very convincing. Um, if you don't know how to describe your management style, one thing you can do is look it up online, read up on different management styles, and see when you see something and it's like, "Oh, that's me.
Hmm.
That's how I do things." Now you have a vocabulary. Now you can describe that. Um, Another thing to do would be to ask people that you've worked with, "What did you like about my leadership style? How would you describe it?" Because sometimes it takes a different point of view. And, and that actually brings me to the issue of social proof. So, as I'm saying, soft skills, it can be very hard to demonstrate or prove in an interview. But I'm telling you, you can demonstrate them by the way your demeanor and by telling stories.
Yeah.
Um, but social proof can be really useful, and by that I mean especially LinkedIn recommendations.
Hmm.
This is one of the great underused ways of demonstrating your skill. A lot of people don't have any, they're not sure how to ask for them, they're not sure it matters. But if you have lots of people vouching for your soft skills, "Oh, he was great to work with, they had a great sense of humor, always, always a good team worker," they don't even have to be specific. They can use the cliches, and because it's coming from somebody else instead of yourself, it's going to be believable. And there's nothing wrong with maybe once in the interview mentioning something like that, saying, "It's really important to me to collaborate." And you may even have seen so and so in my profile who said, "I always love collaborating with her." And you can put those on your resume as well, little
Mm.
excerpts from them. So that's a great way to show your soft skills and other skills.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
how do we do that? Like ask, because for example, a lot of the technical folks that I work with, they're you could see their LinkedIn profiles are not necessarily so much populated. They just and you understand that they are just brilliant and talented people, but maybe they're afraid to ask for those recommendations. What's a good way to ask for those recommendations if for those folks that are a little bit shy?
One good way to start is by giving somebody a recommendation. A lot of times they will then simply turn around and give you one automatically. Um, I would also just say, go ahead and ask for it. Tell people I'm working on my profile. As an excuse, say I heard a career coach on a podcast say I should do this, so that it's
Hmm.
not just you. Um, and so there, if you go to their profile, there is a button somewhere you can click that says "Ask for a recommendation." It might be under the More menu. Um, and an important thing to do is that'll help you get a lot more response from people, make it a much more likely they'll actually write you one. See if you can draft it for them and just send them that and along with the request and say, I'm including something you can use as a starting point. And then by saying as a starting point, you're telling them, hey, I'm not trying to dictate what you should say. But the fact is, they will then most likely just use it verbatim because they don't nobody people are awkward about writing and what'll I say,
Yeah.
and if you don't want to draft something for them, or have a career coach draft it for you, another thing you can do is just coach them a little bit on what you'd like them to talk about. I'd love it if you'd mention something about my skills in collaborating with people and building relationships, and project management,
Yeah.
so that'll help too, being a little more specific.
That's wonderful
Yeah.
advice of thinking of how, we recommend to others and giving those pointers too. Very important. And I love that every advice that you've given is for specific questions for or our demeanor or how to be prepared for the interview. After the interview, what are some recommendations in terms of when it comes to soft skills, even if it's for a technical position? After the interview, what recommendations do you have to demonstrate that we do have the skills, the soft skills for that particular position?
Yes. So, as we all know, you should send a thank you note. Um, and just doing that automatically shows a certain amount of motivation. But you can do it better too. You cannot just do any old thank you note. So, the first three essentials you've got to have in that is thanking them, letting them know you are very interested, which you might think they assume that, but they won't assume that. You may have changed your mind. So thank you that you're very interested. And I think it's a good fit because, and maybe one or two sentences of the high points of why you think it's a good fit. But here's where you can go a little farther and really demonstrate some subtler communication skills is, let's say during the interview, there was a point in the conversation when their eyes lit up and it just really flowed and you could tell they really liked what you were saying. um, in the thank you note, you might add something like, I enjoyed meeting you all, and I especially enjoyed our conversation about X. It's great that you understand XYZ point about it, and I think we're on the same page, or something like that. And that's easier to do if you took a lot of notes right after the interview about what was discussed and what went well and what didn't, and so on.
Hmm.
Uh,
Okay.
and then people think just one thank you note and that's it. You just sit back and wait, or that you contact them repeatedly to see whether they've made a decision. I wouldn't do either of those things. What I think is even better is periodically, like assuming that you don't get an answer right away. And sometimes interview processes go on for weeks. This is often true in the corporate world, and it's even more true in public organizations like universities and so on. Uh, so what you can do is maybe once a week, drop them another note saying, thank you again for our meeting on such and such date. I'm still really interested in the position. In fact, I started reading up on such and such thing that we mentioned in the interview and discovered this. So see if you can give a sense of continuing the conversation and giving them the idea of sense that you're continually thinking about this job and that you almost are already on staff starting to think about how to solve the problems there. And finally, after the interview, often comes an offer and negotiation. And that is really a test of your soft skills.
Yeah.
Yes. And one thing that's very important there is, first of all, that you do negotiate. I think most of the time you should. And people feel like, oh, it might ruin everything. They might retract the offer. If you have used a reasonable degree of communication skills, most importantly, keeping the whole discussion very positive, reiterating frequently how excited you are about the opening, and negotiating from a very positive attitude like that, they're unlikely to retract their offer just because you made a reasonable attempt to negotiate. Um, and yeah, there's probably a lot more I could say about that, but the
Yeah.
key is do it. Don't be afraid. Uh, don't feel like just the fact that you're nervous is going to ruin it. It won't ruin it. You can be nervous and still do a good job negotiating. Um, don't feel like it all has to be done in one meeting. Sometimes you discuss things in one meeting and then they need to think about something or ask somebody and you need to think about something. You can always come back later and say, so I really appreciate what you offered about this. Can we just add a little something to that? What if we did this as well? So keep the conversation going, self-manage, feel the fear and do it anyway. It's a slogan I love.
I like
Uh,
that. Yeah.
yeah, and just keep it positive throughout, and usually, on average, it results in maybe 5,000 or so more per year, which is not peanuts. Plus,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Thea, for all
yeah,
the advice. And this is definitely a packed episode with a lot of great information for people to
mhm.
listen and re-listen in terms of the how to prepare for an interview. You also have a lot of resources online as well. What are the best ways for people to reach out to you, or if they need your help in anything? How can they? What's the best way to reach you?
Okay, a great way to reach me is through my website, which the homepage is jobsearchandinterviewcoach.com. That's maybe a little long to remember. My blog has a much easier name. What is it? Great Job Sooner. Just go to greatjobsooner.com.
Mhm.
And from there, you can make an appointment for a free consultation with me to talk about your particular situation and whether I can help you one on one. Another thing is the blog itself is packed with useful articles. It comes out once a week. And if you subscribe to it, that's what you get is once a week an email saying what the latest article is. And you also get some free gifts. So I would definitely recommend that you subscribe to greatjobsooner.com. And finally, whoops, headset falling off. Another resource I have is my book,
Yes.
Get That Job, The
Hmm.
Quick and Complete Guide to a Winning Interview.
Yes.
And
Very
so
great book. Yeah.
yeah, and it's an easy read, and I think you'll enjoy it. And it's got everything from many sample questions and tips about answering them to a whole chapter about how to be concise and not ramble. A chapter about managing your nerves and being calm and relaxed. There's a lot of stuff about being aware of what your strongest selling points are and what you want to emphasize in the interview and so on. So check it out. It's on Amazon. It's very affordable.
Yes, and I'll have all those links on the show notes as well. And I
Right.
want to thank you again, Thea, for your time and for the all the great information that you put together, either via your website and your book as well. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And everybody out there, good luck with your job search or your career. And
Mhm.
I wish you the best.